Hello and welcome to my Esoteric Explorer channel. I hope you're all remarkably fine and dandy. Now, we're going to jump straight in today. So, as human beings, we currently find ourselves at a crossroads. We have some massive decisions to make, both individually and collectively, in terms of how we want to experience this reality and what type of world we want to leave our children. Should we simply go with the flow and allow the emergence of artificial intelligence to control and dictate our daily lives, or are we better than that? We have seen over recent years that there is a rapidly growing interest in natural health, herbalism, homeopathy, ancient history, and megaliths. For me, this is a strong indication that we have become disillusioned with the world around us. So what's the answer? How did we end up in this situation? Were we ever truly free as human beings? Is this a prison planet, or have we been the victims of genetic manipulation? How has the alternating current system changed us and our ability to see into other dimensions? How do parasites and heavy metal toxicity play into all this? Well, The Road to Sovereignty, a new book, discusses all this and much, much more. And I have the honour of being joined today by the author, Miss Elona Woods. And here she comes right now. Hello.
Hi, Paul.
How you doing? All right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. I finished your book. It's fantastic. I finished it about an hour ago. I've been reading it over the last few days. It's incredibly thought-provoking and at times quite an intense read. So what prompted you to write it, and what was the experience like?
I decided that I wanted to write a book. I just had a guidance from within that it's time to write a book. So I started it around the lockdown period, and it took around, I'd say, 4 years for completion. So as I was writing it from a homeopathic perspective, but I wanted to incorporate myths and legends and other bits into it. And I found a couple of symbols that kept showing up all the time. And I had one idea, but it completely led me down another. And this is the outcome of what I have written. But really, the reason why I've written this book is because of an inner calling.
Oh, nice. Okay. So I believe I'm right in saying that you were receiving downloads, you were dreaming about certain things, and at times it was quite an intense experience for you. Is that right?
It was, yeah. When I really got to the meat and bones of the story of the book, I'd wake up at really early hours in the morning and I'd leave my laptop there. I'd type, didn't really think about what I was typing. Then I'd go back to bed again. And when I woke up in the morning, I'd look at what I typed and start linking it back to different things. And yeah, this is where it got really, really interesting. And it got intense because I felt like there was a lot of kind of a bit of psychic energy coming towards me in order for me to stop writing, but I continued. The other interesting thing is that I've bought loads of books over the years and not read all of them. They're just on my bookshelves because I'm a book fan.
Mm-hmm.
When I was writing my book, the books that I'd bought that I hadn't read, I needed.
Wow. That's an interesting synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
So the book starts with a symbol, doesn't it?
It does.
The sine wave.
Yeah, that's one of the symbols in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think if I'm going to try and be clever with technology, so bear with me a moment. But I think I have a picture of one of those symbols. Can you see that on the hold on? Okay, so on the right here,
yeah,
we've got this symbol, which when I've seen that symbol before, I thought it was to do with, or it's a symbol of the earth, basically. But there's a bit more to it than that, I understand.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that symbol can be interpreted. You could look at it from a dogmatic perspective within religion. You could also look at it within science. There's loads of different areas within society that symbol has been found. But for me, the way that it worked for me to interpret that was to look at lots of different areas of thought. So biology, medicine, um, electronic side of things, you know, electromagnetic frequencies and all the rest of it. And as I was navigating, writing the book and finding out what that meant, a picture started to emerge, and it was quite a big one. It was one I wasn't actually expecting.
Okay, and what was that picture then?
That there's something here, and there's something here that I believe may be guiding us, but not in a positive light.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And you can feel the energy is weird on the planet. It feels a bit freaky, and no
Mhm.
one can really say what it is, but you know that it's there. And it
Right.
begs the question is, why are we having the human experience that we're having today? And
Mhm.
where is it going?
Mm. So is this is this symbol tied in any way with the way that the planet is controlled through
Potentially.
the media, the government, etc.?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
do. I do feel that it does link back that way, but there's more details about that in the book.
Hmm. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So there's so many different aspects and things that we can talk about within your book. One of the things that really fascinated me as somebody who's big on natural health is the chapters on parasites and heavy metals. I could talk about this all day. It was fascinating. And I think, to be honest with you, I've underestimated the significance of parasites. Um, for a while, maybe a few months ago, maybe a year ago, in the natural health world, it was a real buzzword. And people were all, loads of people suddenly talking about parasites and how they were the trigger for various diseases, including the big C and other things. So let's delve into parasites then. So parasites and the gut-brain connection.
Yeah.
Now this and parasitic mind control
Yeah.
as well, which kind of ties in with that. Which it reminded me a little bit of like a form of demonic possession in a way. It was quite scary. So, how significant a problem do you think parasites are for people?
They reckon that 85 to 90% of the population have parasites and they don't even know it.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
And
Go
yeah, there's the gut brain connection.
on.
So whatever's going on within the gut, when you've got a happy gut, you've got a happy mind. But
Absolutely.
when you do not have a happy gut, you do not have a happy mind.
Hmm.
And I feel that with regards to this, imagine I've put in the book as well that it can change your circadian rhythms. They can do all sorts of different things. So, you know, the midnight mouse, the one that gets up and has a snack in the middle of the night, is it you that's hungry or is it your parasites? You know?
Okay. Yeah. I'm actually a bit prone to that, so that's a concern. Oh dear. Okay. Right. It's very interesting. Okay. So where do how do they get into our bodies?
They can come through food is one of them.
Proce-
Microplastics, they
Processed
piggyback.
foods.
Yeah, so processed foods. They can even come through vegetables, so it's always really good to clean your vegetables and sort things out that way. Okay, they can come through certain meats as well, but I think that in saying that, it's always good to do gut cleanses, period, and to do regular parasite cleanses.
Hmm.
And the air is dirty at the moment. The water, we've seen parasites in water. There's videos of it everywhere.
Hmm.
And people will say, you know, I've got a water filter, but do you have one for the bath and the shower?
Very true. Yeah.
You know, the
Yeah.
other element of it is grounding. When
Hmm.
people go out and they put their feet on the soil, there's certain parasites, I think they're called whipworms, that can go up through the feet. And I'm
Right.
not saying this to make it awful, but I'm just saying it as food for thought. And the reason why I think it's this bad at the moment is because of how polluted the planet is. At
Hmm.
one point, it would have been absolutely fine to do that
Mm.
because we would have had the gut microbiota to be able to deal with it. But since we've moved away from the villages and living within the small communities of the tribes, and we've gone to a more industrialized area where people are more living in cities and in areas that don't have that, it's changed the gut microbiota, but it takes thousands of years for it to be able to develop to deal with the environmental factors that we face today. And we've not been given that chance.
No, absolutely. I mean, I distill my water.
Yeah,
I sell distillers as well, so I would imagine that that's going to take care of the parasite problem in the water, isn't it? A distiller.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's great to know. And the grounding thing, I mean, again, someone that advocates for natural health, grounding is extremely popular at the moment, especially in summertime, obviously. And that's, yeah, that is food for thought, as you say,
Hmm.
because on the one hand, it's very beneficial for our health in terms of the negative ions that we get from the earth when we're grounding. But is it something that you stopped doing yourself as it is? Okay.
Yeah. And it doesn't make me feel great being that way.
Hmm.
But at the same time with it, I'd rather try and keep an equilibrium. And there's a bit of an argument about parasites as well, where people are saying, fix the terrain. Well, if there's external factors that are causing an increase of these things, how do you fix that?
Mm,
I think that with it, it's more of it's damage control. It's staying on top of what could potentially be an
mm.
absolute nightmare.
So, what would the external factors be that are producing these parasites?
Heavy metals is one of them, and we've got them everywhere. And
Yeah.
there's a big relationship between heavy metals and parasites. Where you find one, you find the other.
Hmm.
Foods that have got high levels of parasites in them are fish. And I worry a bit about fish anyway, period, because of the Fukushima. And when we had all of that toxic waste dumped into the sea, and all water is the same. If you go back, through native traditions and you look at the water of the world, it all connects to each other.
Hmm.
So I think that there's definitely a lot that sits in there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's one of the ways that can happen.
Okay. So, I actually advocate to people to eat young fish because of what you just said, because the idea being is that they haven't had enough time to build up a lot of toxicity. So, things like sardines and mackerel are probably okay to eat still. And they're very rich in omega 3s, obviously. So, they're a very important food. So, I would say eat young fish if you're going to eat fish. But
Try not to eat farmed fish either, because
yeah,
farmed fish has really big parasites in there.
mm, okay. So going back to the gut, and that would seem to be where most of the parasites are residing within us. Is that right? In the gut?
I think all disease states start in the gut, and a
Yeah.
lot of people have said that, but they can travel to different places. So you can get heartworms,
Mm,
you can get problems within, the cerebellum. So I wonder, with regards to people, seizures is one of the things that, it is believed is triggered by parasites.
hmm.
So is there something going on in the brain to allow that to happen? Diabetes, another disease state. The interesting one about that is all over the world, dependent on where you lived. If there was, for instance, in Asia, a lot of the people would have the same parasites that had diabetes. But if you went over to, say, Europe, people there would have a different set of parasite that would cause diabetes.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's so many different ones,
Mm,
and most people, if they go and try and get help with it, they get diagnosed with IBS, and that for me is a sign of parasites.
mm,
They get diagnosed with things that there's not really that much help for, but
mm.
you can help yourself.
So I remember reading in the book about IBS, and I was like, "Wow, that's very interesting," because um, I know a couple of people with IBS, and at times their mental health hasn't been the best, and perhaps that would indicate that it's actually parasites.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
most people don't clean their guts,
Mm.
and that's another problem. You
Yeah,
clean
sure.
your bins, but you don't clean your gut.
So, how would you recommend people clean their guts, Elona?
So there's different ways you can do enemas. There's different formulas that people have put together. There's colonics. It's finding a way that you feel comfortable with, but
Mm,
there are absolutely lots of different ways that people can do that. Fasting is another way.
mm. So, what about fermented foods?
They're
Do
good.
they're
Yeah.
good? They
Yeah.
feed the gut, don't they, with beneficial bacteria? But do they cleanse the gut at the same time?
It depends. If you're going to eat fermented foods, I would really recommend people eat the fermented foods from their ancestral background,
Okay,
because that's what their ancestors would have eaten to manage these kind of problems. When we're
right.
crossing over the boundaries of eating foods that are not necessarily in alignment with, our ancestral genealogies, we're actually putting something into the body that's different to what we are.
Hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, what's the biggest problem in terms of parasites, or what's the most common form of parasites?
Blastocystis is what I looked at when I was looking through my stuff, and there's loads of different symptoms with that, and symptoms will be dependent on you. So everybody will have different symptoms.
Hmm.
The worst parasite, I think, is the spirochete, and that's the one that goes into the system. And every time you detect that something's wrong, it reassembles itself and transforms itself into something completely different.
Is
And
that the one that can break down its own DNA?
yeah,
That's pretty impressive. What a
yeah,
rascal!
yeah,
Incredible stuff. Yeah. What about syphilis?
that's the spirochete, same thing.
That is the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Okay,
is.
that's very interesting because I'm thinking back to your book now, and you were talking, or somebody, you were quoting somebody in the book that was talking about how evil originated in the world, and they were linking it, I believe, to syphilis. Am I right?
Yeah, they were. They
Yeah,
were.
it's
Yeah.
like a bit of a mind blower, to say the least. Um, and the first thing I thought of when I read that, I've got to be honest, was some very wealthy and
Yeah.
powerful elite
People.
people. I probably won't mention them out loud on here, but you know, they live in England and they're very powerful, if you catch my drift. And I'm guessing that through the ages, their ancestors have very commonly slept with lots of prostitutes, possibly, and that's how that problem has come about. And that would explain an awful lot, wouldn't it? Really, when you think about it.
It would, but the other thing as well with it is that most of the disease states, or some, yeah, a lot of them, syphilis has been around for a very long time because it's in Metamorphosis by Ovid and it's written into myths and legends. And Apollo poisoned somebody with that because they decided to go against him. And this is why reading myths and legends is really important and across the world, not just of one area, because you start to notice patterns and trends,
Hmm.
okay, throughout history and throughout society. So
Mm.
the oldest, I'd say, parasite that has been around is leprosy and sora. So these are the skin itches,
Yeah.
the problems with the skin and the gut. And then it's mutated, and you get things like gonorrhea is another one. Then you get also tuberculinum, and you get syphilis. Syphilis is one of the worst ones because it's the great mimicker. It goes into the body and it can change your thoughts. So
Mm.
you start thinking in a way that you think that it's you, but actually it's not.
I just remembered as well that there was a member of the family that I was referring to earlier in connection with syphilis, and they were actually considered to be one of the contenders to be Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, I
You
remember.
know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
And that person had syphilis.
Yeah.
It's documented. So that's very interesting.
Others that had syphilis, Hitler,
Yes,
suspected
in the book,
syphilis. Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah, Leo Tolstoy, Nietzsche.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
syphilis can be destructive, but there's also the genius side of it as well.
That's something that blew me away because I automatically, when I think of parasites, I think of, you know, the negative aspects of it. But in actual fact, you can gain sort of positive characteristics, can't you, as
Yeah,
a result of it? So these people are, I guess, very sort of up and down and quite manic and
alternating current,
yeah,
up, so
exactly.
below. You know, they go through different stages of different things,
Mm,
and they're creative but also destructive.
mm.
Another one was Van Gogh.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and look at the way that he lived his life. And he said that he wanted to just silence the mind, so he got into art, and he creatively created some really wonderful things.
Mm. Yeah, definitely, yeah. Okay, so in turn, just to finish on parasites and heavy metals, what are the best things that we can do, do you think, to avoid them and also to get them out of our systems? Obviously, you spoke about cleansing the gut, but is there anything else that we can do?
Stop eating processed foods for a start.
Massive,
Just,
yeah,
just a no go, really. Start
absolutely,
looking at the things that have heavy metals within them, things
yeah,
like makeup. Sorry,
yeah,
ladies. Plastic stuff as well. They found lead in certain things, you know, lead in makeup. It's
yeah,
really going back to such a gentle way of doing things. It's more the way of the ancestors where we live quite a simple life.
mm,
and moving things that way. Look at grounding, look at the area that you're in potentially, but just on a general basis anyway, and find other ways. There's grounding maps that are really good. And I know it's not quite the same thing, but there's other ways of doing it until us humans get to a point of cleaning up the planet.
Mm-hmm. When I've grounded before, actually, I usually do it in my local woods.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would be probably safer to do it that way, where it's, very much undercover, and it's more of a natural environment as opposed to doing it, outside walking down the road. Would you
In a
say?
local park. I'd potentially say so, because trees absorb a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
absorb a lot of radiation. They absorb so much different things. So I think that would be a great way to maybe go that way. I'm not saying to 100%, but just think. And if you don't want to keep accumulating these things that are also influenced by electricity as well, because we've seen a rise in syphilis. In America, it's gone up 200%. In the UK, we're at the highest rate of syphilis since 1948, and that's been since 2019 or 2017, I think it was. So what's changed?
Yeah, I guess really processed foods are a big thing, aren't they? As you were saying.
And
Uh,
frequencies.
I've
How going up everywhere. What are they doing? What are they? Is it a frequency match for these things being able to enter into the body? Is this why ticks have risen?
Okay. So then we're talking about maybe electromagnetic interference that we encounter every day, and Wi-Fi and all these things.
And they're a frequency match as well for unresolved trauma.
Okay. Okay. I've often, just going back to processed foods, I've often likened processed foods or eating processed foods to putting diesel in a petrol car.
Yeah.
We're not designed to eat these foods. So yeah, if you're watching, please avoid processed foods. They're not good for you. Right, I had a jam donut last night. Whoops. Shall we move on now? Perhaps talk a little bit about astrology, or the astrological aspect in the book. So I found, I think it was in the chapter "The Fall of the Female."
Yeah.
You mentioned about Neptune, and I'll come on to the number 8 as well, because the number 8 came up a lot in your book, so we need to talk about that. But yeah, you mentioned that Neptune moving into its natural sign of Pisces back in 2011, and it will eventually move out again in January 26.
No, it moves out in 2025. Then it has a transit in October 25 until 26, and there it will stay. And it's there for quite a long time. So yeah.
Okay. But what's relevant about this period in time?
The relevance of Neptune in astrology really is all about consciousness.
Okay.
It's about how we think. If you have a look, since 2011, mental health has risen. So people have been trying to become life coaches or becoming life coaches. They've been talking about mental health. They've been looking at their wellness in regards to the way that we live in the world. And this has risen quite a lot. Now, Neptune's a bit of a strange planet because it wasn't discovered until later on. But if we have a look back through history, as I've also put in the book as well, we've got some great people that were in Neptune in Pisces periods. And that was Avicenna, who was a polymath that also worked with astrology and natural herbal medicines. And there was another period where we also had Paracelsus, and he was an alchemist, a Swiss physician, and he also worked with herbs and minerals. So this, for me, is helping us, if we want to tap into something far greater than ourselves. But the flip side of that is delusion. It's not seeing things for what they really are. Because there's always a dual element to everything. We're living in a binary system. So the astrological side of it with things, for me at the moment, it can help us access something outside of ourselves.
It's fascinating. We are living in the best of times and the worst of times, to quote Charles Dickens. It's an amazing time to be alive, but it's also extremely challenging. So just getting back to the number 8. So Neptune is the 8th planet. And in the same chapter I mentioned, you write that 8 seems to hold a limiting value, keeping us in some sort of cyclic cycle that prevents us from expanding. So I'll ask you to expand on that if you can, but it was ironic reading that, because literally the day before I read that. Somebody texted me and said, Paul, you've got to price up all your products on your website so it incorporates the number 8, because if you do that, 8 is the number of abundance, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden your sales will go mad, blah 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 blah, you know. And I must admit, I was a bit skeptical on all that. So yeah, so can you elaborate on the number 8?
When you look at the number 8, it's literally like the Ouroboros. Okay, you turn it on the side, you've got the Ouroboros.
I always thought it was a symbol for the rising sun and the setting sun with the horizon. That's what I thought it meant originally.
No, you could see the way the sun moves through the analemma, which is also in there. But for me, it's never coming off of a kind of trajectory. And with regards to the prison planet element of it, I think we're more in a consciousness trap rather
Right.
than it being a prison planet. We can go beyond that, because otherwise it means that we never have free will. And I do believe that we do, and that we can change things on a bigger level. But at the moment, if you look at the consciousness on the planet, it's at a very, very, very low level.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not, certain people are rising above that are able to see outside of the system, but not everybody is able to. And it's kind of leading us somewhere, because when the majority think in a certain way. Yeah, so going back to the number 8, it's interesting that you said about this kind of people talking about it being really great. Again, there's the dualistic side of it. The ones that I think that are still, because we've got different levels of which we awaken, and one of the levels I think is the new age kind of woke agendas. For those that are just unplugging, they're kind of going to go that way, big
Mm-hmm.
business, monetized, all of that. But when you start going beyond that and you start reading old books and old literature, you can really start to understand the numbers on a completely different level. And numbers are magical anyway. You could even meditate on numbers
Mm-hmm.
and see what comes from within you with regards to them.
Okay, that's interesting. I've spoken to Michael Feely about this before, and he's mentioned that. So, are there any books that you can think of that would be good for finding out about that?
You've got to go to where your soul guides you to, really. You know, that's really quite a tricky one. I mean, I liked Occult Philosophy by Henry Agrippa. I thought that was great, that book. That
Okay.
was good. But it's quite an intense read because it's about 500 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, you've got to go back. If you want really good knowledge, you've got to go back to the past.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Let's see where we're
And
at.
just quickly as well, the 8th house, Pluto. And the 8th house is all about transformation. It's about rebirth and death and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
But one part of that on a mundane astrology, which is looking at it from a global viewpoint, is that people in higher levels are stopping people that they would classify as beneath them from being able to expand their consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's another part of the trap. So I think it's more that we're in a consciousness trap.
Okay. Okay. Right. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about homeopathy now.
Yeah.
You are a homeopath. Reading about homeopathy in the book, I've been delving into it a little bit. Homeopathy. I've done one of your treatments for parasites,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done one for thinning hair as well, which was interesting because I just got used to the idea of going grey, and then I noticed a thinning patch on the top. Oh, here we go. So I'm doing that at the moment as well. And I have seen results actually. I've got some like baby hairs growing back on the top of my head, which is most welcome. So, but one of the things that really fascinated me with what you wrote about with homeopathy was how it can help us on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
That was something I wasn't really aware of. So, how can homeopathy help us on a spiritual level?
When you're treating somebody holistically, you're looking at all of them. And with regards to homeopathy, it works in the format of like cures like. So if I got stung by a bee or a wasp, the first remedy that I would go for is a remedy made by a bee or a wasp,
Mm-hmm.
and you take it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I said also that there's different ways that people can be treated. So there's those that have acute symptoms. and the flu, you can take some remedies that will help you get through that. There's those that are in the system matrix, quite happy to be here, they don't want to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you really start clearing your trauma, behind everything you clear is a gift. And what homeopathy does is that when I prescribe a remedy, yes, I select the remedy, but when the person takes it, you and I could take the same remedy, but we'd get completely different results.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because we're different. And it helps you to tap into something more. And people have experienced bigger dreams. They've been able to experience things that would not be able to be explained by science.
Okay. I remember about halfway through the course that you gave me for cleansing parasites, about halfway through, for about 2 or 3 nights, I had nightmares.
Yeah.
And that's very, very strange for me. I'd rarely have a nightmare. So I thought that was interesting.
Parasite die off.
Yeah.
When parasites start dying off, they don't like it. And they will cause all sorts of havoc within your body because they want to stay there because they love you.
Mm. So in what ways can they cause havoc other than nightmares, which I experienced? What other ways are there, would you say?
Bloating, skin problems.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah, all sorts. People get angry, frustrated, because it's not you that's angry, it's them because they're dying off, anxiety, all sorts of different things. So it is always good to start gently and then just make it a common practice to keep on cleansing them. And after a while, if I feel something's up with my gut, I know instantly, and then I just go and sort it out with immediate effect.
Okay, so the course that I did that you gave me lasted about 3 months.
Yeah.
Is that always going to be long enough, or would I need to do it for longer?
They hatch every full moon.
Right.
Yeah, and the new moon. So really, if you're watching this, look at your behaviors around those periods. What are you like on the full moon? Because if your people are losing it or they're getting upset or emotional, there's a lot going on within the gut at that point, and it's being repopulated by things that you probably don't want there.
This is incredible. It's a real mind opener, this parasites thing, especially from my point of view, because of my job, what I do. It's really something I'm going to get my head stuck into now. Thanks for that.
Going back to homeopathy as well, just quickly, for those of you that are on your spiritual journey, it helps you find that you're the key to the lock that you're trying to access. Because certain people say, I can't see things, I can't do this, I can't do that. But it helps you to actually find your own gifts from within, because everybody here has a gift on this planet and it's down to us to find it. And this is one of the ways that I found has helped me to work through a lot of different things.
Right. Okay, brilliant. One last point on that as well. You mentioned trauma a moment ago. How can homeopathy help with trauma, would you say?
I'll go back to an ancestral remedy that I took, serenum. I took that a few times and it made me feel really good. So I thought I'd bring the big dogs in and go higher potency. And that took me back to my childhood trauma where I did have a skin itch and I did have problems. Okay. And it allowed me to feel the frequency of the home that I was living in. And I didn't have the best childhood. It allowed me to see things in an entirety of why I felt stuck now with stuff. And you've got to feel it to heal it. And once I refelt that and got myself out of that level of sadness, it enabled me to do things that I didn't even know that I could do. So it helped me to clear the trauma from within.
You have to have a certain amount of courage, I think, to do these things. Many people, I think, would just be like, nah. But I do find it very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool. Okay. Were we sent here as punishment to be consumed by parasites? And what came first, humans or parasites?
Don't know. And Carlos Castaneda says that in his book, The Active Side of Infinity. Have you read that book?
No.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
What's it called again?
The Active Side of Infinity.
Okay. I'll check that
So
out.
I really don't know, because what came first, the human or the tick? And tick is one of the bigger problems that we've got, again, because we're going back to the spirochete. And the thing is, no one knows why we're really here. Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? And how have we gone from being people that could create such wonders to the version of human that we've got today. How did we get here? Why are we here?
Yeah, sure. And what about genetic manipulation? Because that's something that I have personally kind of entertained as a theory. I think it makes a lot of sense in many ways. Um, it's something that the film 2001: A Space Odyssey hints at quite strongly as well. So, is that something that you think has happened to us over the eons?
I feel so because it seems that we're actually devolving.
Yeah,
Yeah, as
yeah,
a race and as a species, we are devolving because we're reading these stories of people that were able to do wonderful things, and there's still snippets of it out there, but it's hush hush.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but I wonder if something has happened that's cut us off from being able to be our multi-dimensional selves, so that we're trapped in the material, unable to access the other part of ourselves, which is the transcendental self.
Hmm.
And that's integrating the spirit with the body.
Yeah.
As I said, we're in the binary system. So
Mm.
for the material, there's also the spiritual nature, and most people are not accessing that. But I think that something's hijacked that and
Mhm.
is creating the world that we live in today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something else I think that we're lied to about, or I question at the very least, is we're told that we live longer than we ever have done before.
Don't believe
Now,
that.
no, neither do I. And I'll tell you why I don't believe that. When I was a very small boy, me and my mum used to walk to my play school, and we used to walk through a graveyard, an old graveyard. And I used to love reading the names of the people on the stones, on the tombs, because some of them had quite sort of Dickensian funny names. But one of the things I noticed was the people that were there, that were buried there, either died very early in life, like up to like say the age of 7, or they were living well into their 90s, all of them. So, and I guess these people were probably died around sort of the early part of the 20th century, and I would imagine that they probably had a more, even back then, they probably had a more natural existence than we do now,
Yeah.
in terms of what they ate and the quality of the air and etc. So I do think as well that that's something we've definitely been lied to about.
Yeah. And most people would grow things in their garden. I mean, we've got
Yes.
our front garden now. You're not allowed to grow stuff in your front garden. What's that about?
Well,
You
great,
know?
great around the back. But yeah, I mean, there's some very tight controls in Canada and America now, I think, with growing your own food, which is, I mean, that's just crazy, isn't it? Just
And
goes to
having
show you.
chickens.
And having chickens as well, yeah, because of the old, oh, blimey, I'm going to get thrown off YouTube. The flu,
Yeah.
which is just like crazy. I think it's in Scotland now. If you don't register your chickens, you get fined an extortionate amount of money. So they're really cracking down on the chickens and the eggs, obviously. I've got 2 allotments. It's one of my passions in life. And one of the excuses I hear from people now is that we just don't have time to grow our own food.
Yes, you do.
I guess it's all about priorities. I mean, some people now are working 2 jobs, some people are working
Yeah.
3 jobs. Um, and maybe it's not so much a question of time as it's a question of how much energy they have left to because you do consume quite a lot of energy when you're doing that sort of thing. But yeah, it's something that I really strongly believe in. And of course, if you're growing your own food, it's going to be far more nutritious. It's going to taste much nicer. I mean, I never really liked vegetables until I started growing my own food,
It's the
and
truth.
now, yeah. Um, so yeah, so
And
that's a
when I say yes, you do, I mean start with things like basil and herbs and just different things within the kitchen, things that you can water, build up a connection with nature and
yeah.
start going that way. And then maybe the year after, start with potatoes, things that are
Yeah.
easy, and just take your time with it because what you're doing then is that you're rebuilding your relationship with nature.
Mm. I think that's great advice because I've seen many people start growing food and they start on a massive level, or they try to, and after a few months they give up because they can't keep up with it. So I think, yeah, if you start slowly and build it up gradually, that's very good advice.
Hmm.
Okay, right, let's move on now. Um, I've written that I wasn't going to ask you this, but I will do. It's quite a simple. Well, I say simple. It's a simple question. It might not be a simple answer. Um, What would happen if we all walked down the road to sovereignty? If everyone did it, what would be the outcome? And also, is that possible?
I think that it is for those that are already walking their own pathway. And if we all walked that way, you would be your light, I would be my light, because we're not one. I don't believe in that concept, okay? And everybody would bring their own unique individual energy to the circle, okay? And then from that point, we could create the outcome that we wanted because we are on a level creators. We created. So it would be really about thinking about the world that we wanted to live in. And that takes us out of the consciousness trap. That takes us out of the kind of Ouroboros. It's about reconnecting back to the stars again and to our astral body so that we become whole. And if everybody did that, we would have a very different experience on Earth, I believe.
Absolutely. So you don't believe then that we're all one, or we're all one, and or we're all individuals, but we all come from the one? Is something that I hear quite a lot. We all come from the same consciousness. We're all like kind of fractals of that, bigger consciousness.
Divinity, potentially, yes. But I think that the system that we're living in at the moment is trying to make us all the same. And so the most powerful individuals that I know are individuals. They are themselves.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Okay, right. So, how do we step into our individual light in a time of great darkness?
Listening to your light, intuition, following your intuition, eating the right foods, clearing up the bodies, clearing up the trauma that sits within them. It's becoming more self-aware. And how do you become more self-aware? You start cultivating awareness. It's a daily thing. It's really, if you have a low moment, it's figuring out where that's come from, why it's there. If you keep repeating patterns, you're going back into the consciousness trap again. And for me, it's about stepping outside of that and observing, why am I behaving like this? It's moving away from people that trigger you or situations that don't uplift you, and more stepping into your light, reconnection back to nature and the natural side of doing things. There's loads of different ways, but just find your way. And then what happens is that when you start walking that pathway, you find the others.
Yes, definitely. And that's something that you've done yourself in your own life, isn't it? Because at one point, I believe you were working in the financial sector, the corporate world, or whatever, and you made that decision to walk away, didn't you?
I did, but I got told to leave in the end. I had the dream. I have a lot of dreams. I dream a lot. And if you want to access your dreams more, turn your Wi-Fi off at night and leave your phone out of your bedroom.
And don't smoke weed.
Wild, yeah, don't smoke weed either. And I went to Glastonbury then, met a woman. I dreamt about her before I went there, and it showed me that she was going to really help me.
Wow.
And I was at a point within my corporate life where I just thought, I can't do this anymore because it's soul destroying. And when I got there, she pulled my cards and she said, oh, you're going through a hard time and it's going to get worse. I'm like, great, thanks. But she said, the reason why is because you're on the wrong pathway. And I had the eyes read as well. And she said, you've got the crown of thorns in your eyes, you're walking the wrong path. And the reason why it was difficult is because I was getting in my own way. Because when you're in the corporate, to then try and do something for yourself is the most terrifying thing that you can do. And it's even harder now because most of what we need to do to be able to move forward has got to be done on social media. And it's kind of pulling us down a pathway that I don't really want to be on, but, there's no ways around it.
Yeah, I agree. Social media is definitely a problem. I mean, about 5 years ago, I wasn't on social media whatsoever. And then about 2019, I started my business, and you can't really be in business these days unless you've got a social media presence. And to have a social, a business page on some of these platforms, you've got to start with a personal thingy bob, And before I know it, I love memes. I do love a good meme. So, as some people who are watching this probably know. So, and before I know it, I'm posting 20 or 30 memes a day. And then the notifications, you get the buzz on your phone and you're looking at your phone constantly, blah, blah, blah. Before you know it, you've got a problem. You can end up addicted to these things. And that is not healthy or helpful in any way whatsoever. I realise that now. So
Yeah. And it moves you away. You can learn a lot, but you also have to have discipline.
I have learned an awful lot by
Yeah.
being on social media. So in a roundabout way, I don't regret it. It's been
Yeah.
an interesting experience and journey. But I do think at the same time now, I've not really got much to give on that front anymore, because it's kind of, as I say, it's very addicting. And I've got lots of my own interests and things that I want to do, and these things just get in the way of all that. So yeah, thanks for confirming that, Elona. Cheers.
Yeah. And also as well, before all the social media went crazy, people read a lot more books. They were really into it, you
Mm,
know. And I just find that a lot of people have got TikTok knowledge now, and there's a lot of wisdom online that I don't really think is that great. Um, but again, it's all about levels of which people are evolving. And I
mm,
think that the more that you can do natural things, even with me leaving my job, when I was in that, I started doing the things that I would really love, the
mhm,
things that you think in the back of your mind will never make you any money or doing whatever. When you follow what you love, the money follows, number one, but also your passions increase and you never run out of creativity.
mm. This is very true, definitely. I mean, speaking personally, I've never been happier than I am now.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
I'm a little bit tired at the moment because of my cats waking me up in the middle of the night. But outside of that, I'm extremely happy because I've got my own business. I've got 2 YouTube channels that I'm trying to keep up with. I've got 2 allotments, and life is really good, you know.
Mhm.
And I found as well that it's, even though sometimes it's quite difficult to do, I've had to cut ties with a few people in my life because
Yeah,
they just, they weren't serving me in any way at all. Quite the opposite. And they're people that will just never really um, see this life the way that we do, as an opportunity to kind of, expand our consciousness and be creative and express ourselves. There are so many people that are just still stuck um, deep in the matrix, and I really don't think. I mean, there's definitely a percentage of people that will never ever want to break free. They
yeah.
won't.
Do you
Which
know
is,
why?
go on. I lost you there for
Because
a minute.
man is the only creature that refuses to be what he is.
This is very true. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's scary. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but when you start walking down the pathway that you were never taught about at school,
Mm,
that you've been given dogmatic ideologies of what's to be expected, there's always been a middleman, and you can get to a point where you can connect to your higher self or to your divinity.
mm.
It's not all fluff puppies and rainbows.
No,
It's hard work.
it is. Yeah. Yeah. You do go through a whole range of emotions.
You
And
know, people are terrified right now. If you look at over the last 4 years, all of those that have been red pilled,
mm,
could you imagine being in that kind of matrix and looking at the world for what it is now? It's just not, I don't know what this is now, but it's completely different to what we've ever known.
I feel so sorry for those people. The mass awakening that happened in the first half of 2020. They were suddenly awoken,
Yeah,
and obviously many weren't ready for it. I don't think. With me, it happened about 20 years ago now, and it was a very sort of gradual process. One thing led to another, and gradually I started to see things more clearly about the world. Whereas these people were bang, and I do feel sorry for them, because you end up making mistakes when
yeah.
you start wising up to the world. You do go down various rabbit holes, and it's easy to make mistakes. And I think these people really need our support and guidance.
They do, but then there's different qualities of souls. I think that there's some people that just had that spark within them that
Mm,
instantly just knew that something wasn't right. And what normally happens, or this is what happened to me, I had my awakening at around 18. But I could see things before then. I've always been able to see energies and spirits and stuff like that since I was a kid. And I'd have a little look and I'd be fascinated, but then there'd be a party over there, or there'd be somewhere that I could go. And yeah, that looks interesting, but I'm going to go over that way. And then something would happen in my life that would probably take me to a level of despair or sadness or something. And then that one was more interesting than going that way again. And it
mm,
would start off every 6 months, maybe around that kind of time. And then after that, it starts to become a way of life. So
Yeah.
it's about that cultivation. It's about this spiritual discernment right now, because there's a lot of things that are not 100%. And going back to some people just not getting that, in ancient times, they would have had, the tribes would have had like rituals and stuff that they would have done. And the rituals might have been around the fire, rhapsodes or bards or doing whatever it was, and they'd story tell. If there was something negative in the in the atmosphere, the tribes would come together to repel that kind of energy. And
Mm.
since we've moved into this corporate world, we've moved away from all of that. All
Mm.
of these things that they would have done back then are getting 5-star reviews on Netflix.
Mm.
And people talk about wanting to be able to do it, but they're not doing it.
So would you entertain would you entertain the idea of a parallel society?
Yeah.
Because I mean, in all honesty, I think the power structure in the world is too big to be defeated. I really do. You're not going to, be able to fight with that size of a, control mechanism or whatever. So I've always thought our best hope was to somehow kind of forge a parallel society.
Yeah. Because then the one that we're walking renders the old one obsolete.
Exactly.
Something only has power when it has your attention. But
Yeah.
if you take your attention away and point it towards where you want to go, and
Mhm.
this is where we come back to the individual being who they are,
Mm.
then we can create something completely different. And does it mean that we're all going to get on or agree? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is that we're on the same kind of page, that doesn't work for us. So let's go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We must talk about towards the end of your book, and I was very, very interested by what you were writing about with regards to 110 hertz, and why you think maybe some megalithic sites attuned to this frequency. Can you expand
With
on that?
megalithic sites, certain stones, so for instance, at Stonehenge, there may be one stone there that is attuned to that, but you've got other notes there,
Hmm.
as in accordance with Maria Wheatley's work. But
Yeah.
then you've got other sites like the Hypogeum, and there's loads of like strange stories about that place.
Mm.
And in there, that's at around 110 or 111 hertz, and that hertz coincides with the masculine voice, on average. And when you go in, I went there and I couldn't get in, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't.
Yeah.
And I saw something the other day about kids going on a school trip there. And when they went into that building or the caves that were sit there, because we've also got the elongated skulls that were found there as well,
Yeah.
they never came out and no one could find them. Yeah, there's a lot that's going on in that. And that hurts as well. It affects the brains of humans, or the brain capacity. It turns off the prefrontal cortex and it shifts the brain from one side to the other. And you can go into a meditative state, which is where people are saying that they're getting messages. But the question is messages from what? From who?
Yeah. From where? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Very, very interesting. Okay, Elona, we're up to about an hour now. So where can people find your book?
On my website,
Good.
which is www.elonawoodshomeopathy.com.
Brilliant. Okay. And what's the next move for Elona Woods?
So I'm setting up my own podcast.
Yes.
I'll be having YouTube videos and working with some really great people.
Cool.
Thinking of maybe a follow-up book. Maria Wheatley did this to me. She said, "When's the next book coming out?" And I'm like, "It's not." And she said, "Yeah, 9 in." And I'm like, "Nope, nope, nope." And now I've kind of got to that point. So it's still working with the herbs, it's the foraging, it's the learning. I'm still actively learning every day and tapping into that creative side. And I'm going to see where that leads me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck with that. I'll be looking out for that on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today, Elona. I loved reading this book. It was an experience. It's something that I'll be referring back to many times in the future. So get this book, everyone. It's a fantastic read, really thought-provoking. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again. Please like, share, and subscribe, everyone. And I'll see you soon for another video. Cheers.
Thank you.